Power play. At the time of his father's death, Howard did not have the slightest notion of what to do in life. His parents had always planned his every move. His father had enrolled him into the best school with hopes that he would become an engineer. Howard despised the school and was at best lukewarm to the idea of becoming an engineer, and he was an obedient, acquiescent son who did what he was told. Hughes Sr. had hardly been a stern taskmaster, but Howard revered his father and wanted to please him. Insecure about his own drives and ambitions, he had gone along with his father's goals. One searches his youth in vain for a trace of the individualism and rock-hard independence that would govern him as a man and make him a cult hero to millions. As a youth, Howard was nothing more than a jumble of possibilities, none of them very promising. All that began to change with his father's death. Less than a month after Hughes Jr.'s death, Howard dropped out of Rice College and had been his father's idea, not his. In the months ahead, more signs of his growing independence appeared. Sometimes, all that began to change with his father's death. Less than a month after he died, Howard dropped out of Rice College. Had been his father's idea, not his. Okay, he dropped off himself. In the months ahead, more signs of his growing independence appeared. Sometimes to the despair of his relatives. Free of his father's overpowering personality, Howard began to think for himself. There was another reason for his new independence. His father's death has made him an extraordinarily rich and powerful young man. Under the terms of Hughes Sr.'s will, Howard was the major beneficiary of the estate. The will, dated 11 years earlier, left half the estate to Howard's mother and one-fourth to Howard. Since Eleanor House had already died, his share passed automatically to his son, so he has a lot of money now, all his parents' money. True to his spendthrift ways to the end, Hughes Jr. left little cash. Most of the estate were represented by 1,005 shares of stock on Hughes Tool Company. So this company is all the wealth come from. The value of the company's stock was conservatively estimated to so much. Inheritance tax purposes, the company, which was then returning profit of several $100,000, was in fact worth many times that amount. Overall, the estate was appraised at so much. Once Hughes Sr.'s debt had been paid, the net figure was reduced to 60. Oh wow, so much. There theoretically was worth 3/4 of that amount and about 450,000. In fact, at 18 years of age, he was a millionaire. Shortly after the funeral, Howard left for Los Angeles to visit Rupert and his grandparents. He had been unable to attend the funeral because of their advanced age. Felix, Senior at 85, and Jane, now 82, had left Cocoa the year before to escape the rugged Midwestern winters. So they didn't come to the funeral because they are old. Howard's past day with his relative was a disaster. The grandmother was overcome with grief. Jane Hughes, were still erect and proud, wore black in memory of his dead son. If he had had a favorite child, it was Howard Sr. I am so desolate, she wrote a friend after her son's death. Life is so dark and cold that precious Howard was my idol, more to me than all the world. But why try to tell you? But for you must realize that all my heart was given to that precious child. My life is finished, nothing left. Howard's day with his relatives was a disaster and a turning point in his relationship with his father's side of the family. Not long after Howard arrived, he and Rupert began to quarrel. At issue was Howard's fortune, Rupert felt obligated to take Howard under his wing and offer guidance. He suggested that he should be named Howard Guardian until he reached 21. Howard viewed this as an attempt by Rupert to grab control of his inheritance. Rupert also thought Howard should go back to school and complete his studies, a view shared by the rest of the family. It was as one of the rest of the family how the rest of family can determine a person's fate. It was also one of Howard Sr.'s wishes, as spelled out in his will, but Howard had other ideas, okay? So he is independent. He told Rupert and his grandparents that he did not need a guardian, did not want to return to school, and instead wanted to take over his father's company. Coming from an 18, okay, he didn't, so it looks like he is quite naughty, right? He just want to take the company to get the money and not to study. Coming from an 18-year-old boy, he must have sounded prosperous. Exactly what occurred next is not clear, but both sides clearly staked out positions, refusing to budge. And the visit generated and the sum is coming. Exactly what occurred next to not clear, but both clear. The position refusing to and the visit degenerated into a series of ugly things. Within a few weeks, Howard returned to Houston very bitter towards Rupert, as Dudley Sharp recalled. And so Dudley Sharp is his friend, and Sharp's father is also his father's friend. In Houston, Howard received little support for his plans from his aunt, Annette. I told him he ought to finish rise and have a degree before he got too independent. He remembered. He paid no attention to me. Instead, Howard was now more than ever determined to free himself from any strings to his relatives. So he decided to buy out their minority interest in the tour company, as he explained later. So money is everything. The thing I knew was that I would never be able to get along with my relatives, and that's why I was determined to buy them out and go it alone. Howard told so can't get along, so you just be the only owner of the company. Howard told the office of the tour company to open negotiations with his grandparents and uncle to acquire their 20% interest. They were not eager to sell, but in May of 1924, just 4 months after Howard Sr.'s death, they reluctantly agreed to do so. Why? Is it the stock price get soared or get plunged? The purchase rights was to raise the cash. The tour company dipped into its own reserves, a move that left it dangerously close to insolvency for a year, but it was a risk Howard was willing to take to go it alone. In doing so, he cut forever most of his family's ties, leaving nothing but bitterness between himself and his father's relatives. Howard blamed all the trouble on Rupert, who he believed have organized the other relatives against him. So the Rupert, Howard's sensitive grandmother suffered suffered most from the breach and went to her grave bitter towards Howard. Her will, signed a few months after her death, left her estate to her own surviving sons, Rupert and Felix, so not to Howard. In article, so grandmother won't care about you, they only care about their own sons. In Article 4, she singled out her only grandson for special notice. I mentioned the name of my grandson, Howard, to show that I have not forgotten him and that I purposely have not given him anything in this, my last will and testament. By buying out, I purposely have not given him anything. That is so cruel, I think. By buying out his relatives, Howard had consolidated his hold on the Hughes Tour Company less than 6 months after his father died. The only barrier between him and absolute control was his age. He was a minor and would not be wholly his true man until he was 21. It's not 18, it's 21. But he soon saw a way to overcome that obstacle. Howard had learned that under Texas law, a minor can, at age 19, petitioned the court to remove his disabilities as a minor and be declared an adult. That done, Howard could acquire virtually all the rights and privileges of an adult and assume full control of the tour company. I think that is very wise to get a full control as soon as possible, because his uncles might do something, just sell the company, just do some exchanges, so make the company getting worse in just 3 years. He could not hold a stock in his name. He could hold the stock in his own name. He could oversee his financial affairs without the need of a court-appointed guardian. This circumventing Rupin. The Annette Loomis, with whom Howard was still living, did not like the idea any better than her nephew's earlier decision to drop out of college, but Howard, he said, was just possessed to be declared an adult, and he went ahead with his plan over her objections. Howard could not actually file the legal application until December the 24th, 1924. And his 19th birthday. In the meantime, he campaigned hard with Judge Walter Milliams to act favorably on the request when it reached its court. All through the fall, Howard was one of Judge's golfing partners. Okay, golfing. He played golfing with the country club, so he can make friends now. An excellent golfer, Howard had done some homework about the tour company. Walter Murphy said he couldn't ask him any question that Howard didn't know the answer. Annette remembered, although he had no intention of going back to college, promised the judge that if he was declared an adult, the next fall he would go to Princess Street University, where his friend Dudley was then enrolled and finished his education. I think that's a good idea, to a better university, to meet better people. All of this made a favorable impression on the judge, and on December so the judge is the key. And on December the 24th, when Howard's application was filed with the court, it was a foregone conclusion that Judge Moniz could act in his favor. 2 years later, he signed an order removing the young man's disability of minority and declaring him of full age. So I think in America, there are justice people like the judge, with the judge won't be will not be bought. With that signature, Howard Hughes became master of his own future. Even though Hughes now had full control of the tour company, he took no step to interfere in his day-to-day operations. Like his father, he had little interest in them, and in Howard's case, there was an added reason. He considered in his father's monument to be preserved, protected, and left alone. Thus, he suppressed his instinct to meddle in a way he was never able to do again. For Hughes, there would be no other worlds to conquer. Although he still did not have a clear notion of what they could be. He experimented with a steam power car, talked to Annie about going west to produce motion pictures, and that spring began wooing a young woman named Ella Rice. He was 2 years older, so just 2 years old, he just became a queen. He just I think that's he get the money, and then he want to be an adult, and then very like to get a wedding quickly, just get a marriage very quickly. The sixth executive of the company, he released the percentage of the company dividend. As soon the laboratories were to be heard by three-man board of trustees: Frank Andrews, the tour company's lawyer, Dr. Fred Loomis. After working for weeks on the will with Frank Andrews, once his father's lawyer and now his, Hughes signed the 10-page document in May, 2 days before he was married. Before his word, the wedding took place at 7 o'clock on the June Chronicle. After a leisure summer of playing golf, working on his steam-powered car, and taking his wife to Dallas to show her off to his Cano cousins. So I just think